All right, guys, welcome back. So today I'm going to be doing some general maintenance and setups on some of my guitars. It's that time of year where the air gets dry, it gets cold, and because guitars are made out of wood, the necks are going to shift. Things are going to change a little bit, and you have to make some adjustments to get them back into optimal playing conditions. So I decided to turn the camera on and walk you guys through this because I've had a lot of people recently and really over the past couple of years ask me about how I do my setups. I'll say right off the bat, there's more than one way to skin a cat in this regard. So, you know, if you've got a way that works and you see me say something different, I'm not trying to say you're wrong. This is just the way that I do it. It works for me. I tend to get a lot of compliments on my setups when I sell guitars or loan them out to friends. So I figured I would share with you guys some of the tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. So if you guys have followed the channel for a while or follow me on Instagram, you're probably saying, hey, I've never seen this table set up in this room. Normally I'm working in my garage. I have a pretty good setup for working on guitars in there. However, we're having an uncharacteristically cold spell here in Georgia. It's getting down to like 8 degrees. So I think it's about 40 degrees in my garage. And that's tip number one is don't work on guitars. If you have to work in your garage or your basement or something where you don't have heat, if it's under, I would say 50 degrees, it's not worth it because you'll get the setup right in that space. And then when you bring it back indoors and it warms up, things are going to move around again and it's going to be all out of whack. So it defeats the purpose of what we're going to be doing. So first tip is do not work in the cold. I almost started working on this guitar before I realized I'm wearing a watch that's very prone to scratches. So you're definitely going to want to take off any jewelry, any rings, any bracelets, watches, put that somewhere safe because I can tell you at best, it's going to get dirty. At worst, you're going to get it scratched up. All right, so let's start with some of the products that I like to use. And most of these I discovered just trial and error. So this is Music Nomad fret polish. This is something you can find at Guitar Center. I just order it on Amazon. Pretty simple stuff. You just put it on a cloth, rub it on the frets. It does a great job cleaning it. This will work for probably 90% of the fret cleaning that I need to do. Now, if I get some that are just really dirty, really gunked up, this is Dunlop 8000 grit sandpaper, wet sandpaper. As you can see, I've used this one a lot. I probably should get a clean one, but this stuff works great to get some of the tougher stuff off of frets. And then, there's always a debate about using steel wool on frets. I think it's fine. I've used it in the past. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You just have to be cognizant that it can scratch the fretboard, so you need to tape it off, which is an extra step. And some of the shavings from the steel wool can actually get into the pickups if they're uncovered pickups. And it's really hard to get that stuff out. And I've heard it can actually damage the pickup. I've never had that happen, but so that's why I don't typically use steel wool unless it's just, if I get something that's like 40-year-old frets that have never been cleaned. As far as polishing the guitar, I use this Virtuoso premium polish. This seems to kind of be an industry standard for a lot of guys. It works great. I also use their cleaning solution as well. And then for guitars that are really dirty, might seem weird, but this is an automotive product, Scratch X. And it's a little more abrasive than the Virtuoso cleaner. So, you don't want to overdo it, but this stuff works great. And I use these Meguiar's applicator pads with it, which again, it's really an automotive thing, but it works great on guitar finish. So these two together, and then I'll follow it back up with the Virtuoso polish. And that's how we get a 40-year-old guitar to look something like that. This is one other product that I pretty much swear by. F1 oil, Music Nomad. You can get this at Guitar Center again, or you can order it on Amazon like I do. This stuff is amazing for rehydrating a dry fretboard. It will darken up rosewood, but it's not a stain. It's just, it just rehydrates it. All right, so today we're going to be working on this Moser 6-string guitar. And initially playing this, I noticed some buzzing up and down the fretboard. Now with Neil Moser's guitars, I have the luxury of knowing that the fretwork is perfect. He's known for that. There's no imperfections with these frets. That's something to keep in mind though with other guitars that I might be working on or that you may be working on is, if it's an older guitar, like a vintage guitar with original frets, there may be divots. So that's going to affect how low you can get the action without buzzing it out. So just keep that in mind, if you're using the techniques I'm about to show you. If the fretwork isn't perfect to begin with, you may have to adjust for that. And that's why I know some guys, when they do their setups, they have all these measurements that they go by. I don't do that. It's okay to use measurements as kind of a ballpark to get you started, but every guitar is different. The fretwork on every guitar is different. I like to take them on a case-by-case basis, and that's what we're going to do with this one. So like I said, the action on this one, it was buzzing a little bit up and down the fretboard. So the first thing I'm going to check, let's just kind of look at it here horizontally and see, is the action too high? I would say no. I think the action is actually about where it needs to be. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble getting the camera to focus there, but yeah, it's definitely not too high, and I don't think it's too low either. So that tells me it's got to be a truss rod adjustment that needs to happen. So the way that I do this, I go on the first fret and press down on the low E, and then I go up to whatever the top fret is, 22, 24, it doesn't matter. Press that down. So I'm pressing both of those, and then I'm looking at the 12th fret straight on. And as you can see, when I'm doing this, the string is resting on the 12th fret, which is not good. That means there's not enough relief in the neck. And so I was correct in thinking we need to adjust the truss rod. All right, so like we said, string sitting on the 12th fret, not good. We need to add some relief, so we're going to loosen that truss rod. If you were to see the opposite, where there's a large gap when you press down on those first and last frets, and there's still a good sizable gap between the string and the 12th fret, we're going to need to tighten the truss rod. Good rule of thumb, I would say 2 medium-sized business cards stacked together should be able to slide between the string and the 12th fret, and that's generally going to be your optimum relief. There again, you got to look at it on a case-by-case basis, though. If the frets are messed up or something is imperfect there, you may have to do a little more or a little less. All right, so now that we got that truss rod cover off, you have to determine what sort of truss rod it's got. So this one, as you can see, uses an Allen wrench. If you have a Gibson, grab the tool for that one. If you have a Gibson or something similar, it's going to use this type of tool. But for this one, it's just going to be a simple Allen key. All right, so like we said, we need to add a little bit of relief. So we're going to turn counterclockwise and loosen this up just a fuzz. All right. And now we're going to check and see if that did anything. All right, so we're going to do the same thing we did earlier. Press the low E down at the last fret and the first fret. Line it up, look at it here, and as we can see, there is a little gap there now. And I've tested this out, and this is actually where it needs to be. Now that gap is very small, and again, because the fretwork is perfect on this guitar, we can get away with that. It's where it needs to be. Most guitars, you're going to have a little bit more relief, a little bit more space between the string and the 12th fret. But on this one, we're good to go. Now, once you get the truss rod where it needs to be, the next step is to get the action right. How do you do that? So again, there's guys that measure it. I don't measure it. Every guitar is different. What I do is I take the low E string and I drop the bridge down as far as I can go until a pinch harmonic on the low E around, let's say, the 5th fret buzzes out and I can't do a pinch harmonic. And once I get there, then I come back up, I raise it up a little bit, and I get it just to where I can do a full pinch harmonic and it doesn't choke out. And to me, that's as low as that needs to be. And then I do essentially the same thing on the high E, okay? So I lower this down to where when I do a full step bend, it chokes out at the top. And then I raise this back up till it's just high enough that I can do a full step or maybe a step and a quarter bend, and the note will ring out. There's no buzzing. You don't get any feedback or choke out or anything like that. And that's it. It's as simple as that. I just get to where I can do a pinch harmonic on the low string, as low as I can go, get to where I can do a full step bend on the high string, as low as I can go, and that's, to me, perfect action. Now for your string through, your hardtail, and even your Floyd Rose and Kahlers, that's about as simple as it is. With the tom tail pieces that come on a lot of Gibsons, which is Tune-o-matic, it's a 2-piece bridge system, there's one final step to it, and I see a lot of confusion online and on Instagram in the comments and stuff, so I'm going to try to clear this up. A lot of guys think they all need to be like this, where the tailpiece is as far down as it will go. Okay, some guys think that improves the resonance. Maybe it does, I don't know. And on this guitar, as you can see, it works. The strings up here are not resting on the ABR1, and the tailpiece is all the way down. Perfect. Not every guitar is made that way though. So here is a 1981 Les Paul Custom, and as you will see, I've got the strings as low as they can go without, hitting the Nashville style bridge there, but I'm not all the way down on the tailpiece. That is the correct way to set that up though. You don't want this all the way down and these choking out and like potentially breaking against that. So just keep that in mind. Again, it comes down to the individual instrument. All right, I'm going to just briefly touch on the polishing method that I use. This guitar does not need to be polished. It's basically in like mint condition. And actually, I think I've polished all the guitars that I own at this point, so I don't have one to show you, but I'll just briefly walk you through. So I take these applicator pads that I was showing you earlier. I would probably start with the Scratch X or with the Virtuoso cleaner. Put a little, a couple drops of that on there, make sure it's in there good. And then, Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, right? And the thing with this stuff and the Virtuoso cleaner is if you're cleaning a really dirty guitar or a guitar that's never been cleaned, like something vintage, it can be a little scary the first time you use it because your guitar will start clouding up, and the first 5 minutes you're working on it, it's going to look 10 times worse than it did before you started. So don't let that discourage you. You just have to keep going. It takes a lot of elbow grease, and again, it's just keep that motion going. It's just rinse and repeat. And once you get it to where it kind of breaks through the cloudiness using that product, that's when I bring in a fresh one of these, and then I come back over it with the polish. And that's how you get a guitar that ends up looking like this. All right, next up, I'm going to show you how I treat the fretboard. Before I do, though, I just want to point out these are microfiber cloths that I got from Costco. They're Kirkland. I order them in like the 100 pack or whatever, and they're cheap, they're effective. I pretty much put new ones down on top of my workspace, every 2 or 3 guitars that I work on, and that way every guitar is just sitting on a clean surface. You don't have to worry about getting micro scratches from any dust or dirt or anything that came off of them. Right, so got our F1 oil. This is how I apply that. I just make a line right down the middle. Take a microfiber and just sort of start working it into the wood, spreading it around each fret, make sure it gets up against the actual frets. And just do that up and down the fretboard. One tip is when you get down here close to the body, try not to get it on the body because this stuff, it's good for the fretboards, but once it gets onto a clear coat, it can be a little bit tough to get off. It's just kind of a little bit messy. All right. So the next step is just wait, let that sit, let it soak in. I think this is a good angle. We can kind of see where it's sitting on top of there. We'll check back in 2 minutes and see if it's soaked in like it should. All right, so we let 2 or 3 minutes pass. As you can see, some of it's soaked in, some of it hasn't. That's actually a good sign. That means this one was fairly well hydrated. I do keep the maintenance up on this guitar pretty good, so that's not surprising. If your fretboard was really dry though, you're probably noticing it went a shade or 2 darker by now, and you may need to reapply 2-3 times depending on how dried out it is. This particular one, I don't think we need to reapply. I think we need to just go through, wipe off what's there, let the rest of that soak in, and we should be done with this one. All right, so this is still drying a little bit, but very happy with the results. As you can see, it darkened up. Just looks a lot nicer. It's gonna feel nicer too. And yeah, that's all we gotta do for that. Guys, so really all that's left is to just string it up and we should be good to go. I'm not gonna film myself stringing it up. There's plenty of different methods for how to string a guitar. There's more than one right way, so pick one that works for you and the main thing is just don't overwind them and don't underwind them. So that's going to wrap it up for the video. I wanted to keep this video short, and I think I did. Hopefully this helps out some of you guys out there, and particularly I'm sure there's people who are in a panic with a guitar Googling, how do I do a setup? So I hope you find this video, and I hope it helped you. And just to do a quick recap, so basically you want to start with the truss rod before anything. Make sure, do I need more relief? Do I need less relief? You check that by pressing the low E on the first and the last fret, and then looking directly down the side of the neck at the 12th fret, and you should have at least a business card thickness of relief between that 12th fret and the low E string. So once you get that right, then you just want to adjust the action, which the way I do it is lower the low E down to where you can't do a pinch harmonic, it chokes out, and then bring the action up just enough that a pinch harmonic will ring out. Do the same thing for the high E, lower it down to where a full step bend is going to choke out and you don't get sustain, and then bring it back up just enough that the note will sustain and ring out. And that's pretty much it, You just keep the fretboard hydrated, keep the frets clean, and you're good to go. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be trying to do hopefully more of these videos in the future. And again, thanks for tuning in.